There's a specific kind of unease that Elden Ring is really, really good at. And it's not jump scares, it's not gore for its own sake. It's the feeling of finding something that's clearly wrong and having absolutely no one in the game willing to explain why. You find the thing, you read every item description near it, you check every NPC dialogue tree that might mention it, and then you just sit there, staring at your screen, because the game has decided that's all you get. Today we're looking at 5 of those moments, the ones that don't just raise questions, but genuinely unsettle you, and see how far the available lore actually takes us before it runs out. Let's start with Godwyn. If you spent any real time with this game's story, you know Godwyn's death is the hinge the entire plot swings on. He's the golden child, the demigod everyone agrees was actually good, and he gets assassinated by the Black Knife Assassins in a killing so significant it triggers the shattering and throws the whole lands between into war. That part we understand. What we don't understand is what happens to his body afterward, and once you actually look at it, it's hard to unsee, because Godwyn's corpse isn't just dead, it's still growing things. There are root-like structures extending from it, this pale, waxy, almost fungal texture to his remains. And it doesn't look like decomposition, it looks like cultivation. Like something is still actively happening to him after death. And the unsettling part isn't just that it's growing, it's the direction it's growing in. These aren't roots reaching down into soil the way you'd expect from something being reclaimed by the earth. They spread outward and up, almost deliberately, like his body has become a kind of growth medium for something else that needed him specifically to take root in. Death itself doesn't seem to have completed for Godwyn the way it does for anyone else in this world. And that's the detail that should bother you more than it probably does on a first playthrough. In a setting obsessed with destined death, with an entire boss built around the concept of finally letting death be death again, here's a body that's stuck in some in-between state, neither properly alive nor properly gone. The game gives us fragments. We know the Black Knife Assassins killed him. We don't get a clear account of what was done to his body afterward, or why it presents the way it does, or whether this is a natural consequence of how demigods die versus how mortals die, or whether something was deliberately done to keep him in this state. Maybe it's tied to the nature of the Golden Order and how it processes divine death. Maybe it's something closer to a punishment, a way of keeping him suspended so he can never truly rest and never truly return either. There's also the question of whether Marika or anyone close to her actually witnessed what her son became, and if she did, what it would have meant to look at your own child's body doing that and have no way to stop it or explain it. The game just isn't telling us, and every theory you'll find online is doing the same thing we're doing right now, staring at the wrongness of the image and trying to reverse engineer a reason for it. From there, let's go underground to Noxstella. Noxstella is one of those areas that does so much with atmosphere alone that you almost forget how little you're actually told. It's this eerie, submerged, glowing ruin of a civilization, full of statues and silent architecture that all points towards something that once defied the greater will outright. And scattered through it are the Noxstella giants, these massive, still figures, seated on what look unmistakably like thrones, not standing guard, not mid-battle, enthroned, which is a strange, specific choice for the game to make, because it implies rulership, implies these weren't just decorative statues or background dressing, but figures who held some kind of authority in a city that's now completely silent. And their origin is just not explained, not in an item description, not in a piece of environmental storytelling that ties it together, nothing. We don't know if they were protectors of the Eternal City who died at their post. We don't know if they were killed by whatever force eventually crushed Noxstella. We don't know if enthroned even means what it looks like it means. And that word is really doing a lot of work here, because a throne isn't a neutral piece of furniture in this world. Everywhere else in Elden Ring, sitting on a throne means something, it's a claim to rule, it's a title, it's the entire premise of the tarnished whole journey toward becoming Elden Lord. So finding an entire species enthroned in a city that predates almost everything we understand about the current order raises the possibility that there was a hierarchy here that has nothing to do with Marika, or the Erd Tree, or the Greater Will at all, one that simply existed and then simply stopped. What we're left with is the suggestion that there's a whole layer of history here, a lost hierarchy, maybe an entire lost mythology, sitting frozen at the bottom of the world, with absolutely nobody left to explain it to us. And there's something genuinely unsettling about that kind of silence. The sense that an answer clearly used to exist, that these figures meant something to someone once, and that meaning simply didn't survive. Let's move to Mount Gelmir and the god-devouring serpent. This one is maybe the most viscerally disturbing entry on this list, because it's not abstract, it's not architectural, it's a body horror problem. And it's happening to a named character you actually interact with. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, doesn't just worship or serve this serpent, he becomes fused with it, wrapped into it, consumed by it in a way that's presented as this grotesque merging, rather than a clean transformation. What makes it worse is that this doesn't read like something done to him against his will. Rykard sought this out. He wanted this, or wanted whatever power came attached to it badly enough that becoming this thing's host, and eventually barely being distinguishable from it, felt like an acceptable price. And the obvious question the game never quite answers is what the god-devouring serpent actually is. Is it a god in its own right? Is it something Rykard summoned and lost control of? Is god-devouring literal, meaning this thing's entire nature and purpose is to consume divinity itself? And if so, what does that mean for a setting where becoming a god, or getting close to one, is basically the entire plot's central obsession? There's a version of this mystery where the serpent is almost a dark mirror of what every demigod is trying to do. Except instead of ascending toward divinity, it swallows it whole. That's a genuinely disturbing possibility, and the game gives us just enough to consider it seriously without ever confirming it. What we're left holding is this image of a man willingly fusing himself with something that devours gods, and no real answer for why that seemed like power to him instead of a horror story. Now, the Gloam-Eyed Queen. If you've spent any time in this community, you already know this name carries weight completely disproportionate to how little actual lore we have on her. She's referenced constantly, item after item, and the through line is that she's tied to the Godskins, that she wielded destined death through black flame, that she represents something the current order actively suppressed or erased. But we never meet her. We never get a clear origin. We get relics of her power and a lot of secondhand implication, and even after everything Shadow of the Erd Tree added to this game's lore, she doesn't get resolved, she just gets more theories attached to her. And that's the specific kind of chilling this mystery produces. It's not a jump scare, it's the dread of an erased figure. Someone who was clearly powerful enough and threatening enough to the Golden Order that the historical record itself seems to have been scrubbed of her. Some players connect her directly to Marika, the theory being that she represents some earlier, harsher version of Marika herself, a face she wore before adopting the Golden Order's more merciful public image. Others connect her to Mesmer, pointing at the serpent imagery that runs through his entire storyline, and wondering if the two are tied together through that shared symbolism, maybe even as family, maybe as something stranger than that. Still, others think Melina resembling her in one particular ending is the closest thing to a real clue we've been given, and that the two are connected in a way the game simply refuses to spell out. None of it's confirmed. What we're actually looking at is an entire figure who mattered enough to shape the world, and specifically doesn't get to exist clearly in it anymore. And there's something genuinely disquieting about a setting where being erased that thoroughly is apparently possible. And finally, let's talk about Insha. Compared to the last four, Insha almost seems like a minor character on paper, And that's exactly what makes this one land differently. We don't get a wealth of lore for him. What we get is a sudden, unexplained betrayal. One that isn't set up, isn't foreshadowed in any way you'd notice on a first encounter, and just happens. Which is somehow more unsettling than a big dramatic villain turn would have been. There's no monologue to make sense of it. No item description that retroactively explains what he wanted or why. Just the fact that it happened. And just enough fragments left over for the community to spend years arguing about whether he's connected to undeath, whether he's tied to cut content that never made it into the final release, whether he's served some forgotten order that isn't detailed anywhere else in the game. And maybe that's the real thread connecting everything on this list. It's not that these mysteries are dramatic and the way a final boss reveal is dramatic. It's that they're quiet. They're the game giving you just enough information to know something is deeply wrong, and then declining, completely and deliberately, to tell you what. Godwyn's body still growing. Giants enthroned in a dead city. A man fused with a god-eating serpent. A queen erased from her own history. A minor character whose one act of betrayal has no explanation attached to it at all. Elden Ring doesn't need you to have the answers to feel the weight of the question. And honestly, maybe that's worse.